Hi everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Mastering Team Success, the Power of Interpersonal and Technical Training. My name is Etty, I'm the Content Marketing Executive here at ILX. We'll give it a couple of minutes for everyone to join, but in the meantime, I've got a couple of housekeeping bits that I just need to run through. Just so we're all on the same page about how we're going to run today's webinar. So firstly, you'll notice that you're all on mute. Please keep yourself that way. It just means that we can run a bit more of a streamlined session. Don't have to hear people kind of popping up throughout. If you do have any questions as we go through, we're going to be running a Q&A portion at the end, but Nick and Feras here, who are going to be running the presentation, have kindly said that they will answer a couple of questions as we're going through. If you have any that are sort of specific to the content that they're talking about at that given time, obviously feel free to pop them in the question panel. And then if they're more sort of general questions, leave them to the end and we'll run through them in the Q&A portion. The webinar is being recorded. That's quite a common question we get. So yeah, it will be recorded and will be available on YouTube afterwards. You'll receive an email with the link to that following the session. So that should be going out this afternoon. And we also like to say, give us a follow on social media. We're active on LinkedIn, Facebook and Instagram. So you can give us a follow over there and we sort of keep you up to date with any other sort of webinars and other sessions like this that we'll be running in the future. And finally, just before I hand you over, we do have an exciting exclusive offer for those of you that have joined today. So sort of keep your eye out at the end and I'll be going through a few more details of that once we get to the end of the session. So yeah, without further ado, it's my pleasure to hand over to Nick and Feras, who are going to be taking you through the main portion of today's session.
Lovely. Thank you, Etty. Much appreciated. So I'm Nick Winston. I'm joined by my colleague Feras, Giorgio, Nasser. We're both business psychologists. We work for ILX. We've worked predominantly over the last 20 years supporting organizations trying to make life easier. We're here to talk to you today about why it's important, what the value is of including a soft skills offering or interpersonal skills offering, or actually, as we like to call it, an enabling skills offering alongside your technical skills as well. Now, I'm going to start off by launching straight into some statistics because we like to talk about statistics. We like to share these things. So here are a couple of points just for you to consider. Let's see how you feel about these. The National Association of College and Employers, this is an organization in the US that does a lot of research and studies around these things, found that organizations that prioritize soft skills in their workforce are likely to experience a 26% higher revenue. 85% of job success is attributed to soft skills. We're going to dive into that one a little bit more a little bit later as well. Organizations with highly engaged employees, which is normally a result of leadership having good soft skills awareness, experience 21% higher profitability and 17% greater productivity. I mean, these are important and key things. 70% of change initiatives fail, impacted by factors such as change resistance, lack of communication, and poor planning. Now, that's by McKinsey Associates, but PwC, Deloitte, EY all came out with similar figures about 10 years ago, looking at what happens with major change initiatives. That's huge. The implications of that are huge. And later on, I'm going to share some stories around change management that's worked and that hasn't worked as well. Let's explore three more. 94% of employers would stay longer at a company that invests in staff development. Now, if you are on this call, there's a good chance you're involved with learning and development or HR. Implications for that are huge. Higher retention, lower turnover, more skills being kept in the organization. 74% of employees say lack of professional development prevents them from reaching their full potential. And our last one today, 57% of leaders consider soft skills to be the more important than hard skills when hiring new employees. That's some of the stats. And if you do a Perplexity AI search or even just a good old-fashioned Google search, you're going to find so many more stats like that. But here's the thing. When Feras and I teach in engagement and communication, one of the things we teach is that the stats don't really work. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to close this down, and Feras and I are just going to share a couple of stories with you instead, because it's so much more of a powerful thing. So Feras, you've done extensive work in project management environments within different organizations. Could you share an example of whereby you have one team that doesn't have soft skills, doesn't have
Mm.
those enabling skills, and one team where they do? And talk us through the difference. What actual difference did it make to the two teams?
So the first team I'm going to talk about is part of a big infrastructure organization, and they work across different sites, and they launch these big £100 million projects. And with that organization, one of the things they struggle with, because they don't invest anywhere near as much in terms of communication or soft skills, or investing the project managers in terms of stakeholder or resolving conflict, is they tend to end up in the silo working. They end up in you and us. They end up going into that state of mind of there's nothing we can do about it. You know, what we call a fixed mindset, or that it's always been like that. And what we're finding time and time again with that organization, before we introduce more soft skills training to them, is that they were hitting lots of roadblocks. Their projects were delayed. There was lots of conflict, and eventually their top performers would leave because they'd feel frustrated. So that had a big impact on the projects they had, and actually they got fined by their uh, customers because they were missing KPIs and SLAs as a result. And the tragedy is they had lots of very talented individuals who were knowledgeable, had years of experience, and had the clearing. They just didn't enable them to be successful.
So an inability to engage means that they're not accessing the sheer power of the intelligence and skills of people that are in their organization. That then means those people are leaving, they have a fixed mindset, and ultimately this is deeply affecting the business because a deadline is missed, a KPI is missed, which then not only harms them reputationally, but may even lead to fines in the particular situation that you were talking about.
Absolutely. And the project managers end up having to firefight the whole time and actually resolve conflict. And they get caught, when people don't feel empowered or delegated, they have to bring in senior people to go sort it out, like parents, come and sort it out. And senior people, instead of working on strategy, they're being pulled into these little squabbles, really, which all these adults can sort out if they were given the tools and the empowerment to be able to resolve it themselves, which they're more than capable of doing if they realize they are.
So what's the good example?
The good example is I was working with this fantastic organization that worked on IT infrastructure. And what they realized is, when they looked at the statistics, data, but also their experience, is what made a project successful was investing in their people. So before they launched a massive project, what they would do is check everybody's capabilities. And then, even though this is a global company, they would make sure that everybody got to meet physically before the launch of the project. So they would break down the barriers, spend some time together, get to know each other, but also understand each other's communication style. And what they did is they decided how they're going to work together on the project, how they're going to resolve the conflict, and what that did is build trust. And what it meant, that when they were working virtually or globally, there was the barriers of culture and communication. Because they trusted each other and they had that common vision and communication, they were able to see each other's point of view. They were able to resolve conflict and have those really powerful conversations that I could just get to take that dial up to full dial.
So do you think thinking about bringing people together at the start of a project,
Mm.
there's a powerful piece in terms of, I was doing a piece in Singapore for a global company, and the senior sponsor noted that it cost over £120,000 to bring that entire team of 40 people together for a
Mm.
three-day event. That's with people doing economic flights as well, bringing people from across Asia, from across Europe, and across the UK. Do you think it's still worth that investment because of the payoffs that you get?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Easily. I mean, if you think about it, the knowledge and experience of just losing one person off that team, let alone that project failing, not only are you having to rehire somebody, train them up, invest in them again, that person is going to a competitor. and it's affecting your reputation. So if all you end up doing is retaining one expert or somebody who's the linchpin, that's fantastic. But in reality, what you're doing is that you're bringing up people's capability. And what it means for the next project, it becomes easier and easier because everybody's reputation is better. There's better communication. So that short term investment pays dividends down the line. And it doesn't take long to do it.
And it has huge return on investment in terms of reducing things like conflict points, doesn't it? Enabling people actually to build a relationship and come together if they've got a difficulty with something another team's doing because they've got a different priority or a different process or system. Just having those personal connections can make a huge difference.
Ultimately, everybody wants to be successful. And everybody wants an easy life. They might just have different idea of how to achieve it. So if people are given the tools to be able to enable it and actually understand, oh, they want success, we just need to talk about it and get it together. How can we do it? Then it makes that conversation much easier. Makes everybody's lives better.
So by being aware of the psychology, by being aware of those interpersonal skills, we can enable more success in projects and hopefully avoid some key failure points that you and I see happening again and again and again.
Absolutely. So that's the examples from a project management team. Now, there's a lot of overlap, but some important differences with a change team. What's been in your experience, Nick?
Yeah, so you and I were having a chat about this yesterday and talking about some of the different examples that we experienced. And I've got, I'm just going to call them Company A and Company B. Let's explore what goes wrong first of all. So Company A is an organization with about 3,000 people. And I'm going to talk about mergers and acquisitions. We could talk about a process change, an IT change, a structure change, but the mergers and acquisitions, oh my goodness, they hit organizations hard. And mergers and acquisitions don't just happen in the private corporate world, they also happen in the public sector as well. When two departments, for example, come together to create one new department. This is a reality that definitely happens.
Well, it's happened recently with a couple of councils where they've had to merge together or with NHS trusts. So this happens a lot in the public sector.
Absolutely, absolutely. So one organization of about 3,000 people is taking on another organization of about 450 people, merging them in. What the senior leaders did was they got together by themselves, created a lovely plan. They got a change team to create a lovely project plan as well. Everything looked great. There's just one problem. They didn't communicate out correctly. They communicated using long-winded business talk. They were incredibly proud of their communication, even though it fell flat on its face. I can tell you that over a year later, the organization has experienced a massive dip in productivity. People are still unsure about what's happening and they're not willing to build the future. They're still waiting to be led. They're not willing to be proactive. They're not willing to take any kind of risk because they're in defensive mode. They're kind of in this kind of approach instead. This is epitomized by something I heard just a couple of days ago by someone in one of the teams. And they said, I don't know what to do because I've been asked for a set of data. And really, I don't want to give it. Okay, so well, why don't you want to give it? Because I know the person that's asking and I know why they want it and I don't want to give it to them. It will just create so much more work for me and it may even threaten people in my team. Now, if you have a system whereby or a setup or a culture whereby when one person asks for information, the person they're asking for information from is actively resisting giving that information, even though, and they have said, it's really easy to run the report, I just don't want to run it. That's not good. Just think about the sheer hard work that's involved in getting anything going at all. So we've got people that are unhappy, that are frightened, that feel that they're being forced into difficult situations, that sometimes touch on integrity issues. I've been told I need to be really positive with my team, but actually I hate this change. I don't think it's a good idea. You know, that kind of setup from a manager, that's going to flow down. It really is. And for the senior leader, oh my goodness, what a battle. So this organization,
lack of transparency, lack of communication, all of those things.
absolutely, absolutely, yeah. Now, none of this has been done with ill intent. The people at the top of this organization are highly intelligent people, but their focus was on the balance sheet and the project management schedule, not on the people. Let's go to Company B. Company B are excellent. Company B are a large global, excuse me, a large global organization with a division in the UK of about 600 people that acquired another separate organization of about 140 people. Before the deal was even signed up, they called me in to talk about senior leadership change management. We talked about how to communicate correctly, how to make sure that their communication out to the organization could be understood by an intelligent 10-year-old, how to simplify their communication and make sure they explain the reasons why, how to draw out the pain points as well as the benefits so that everything felt authentic and genuine. We taught them principles such as intent-based leadership, how to empower others whilst giving them clear direction as well. Most importantly, we taught them the psychology of change, what they can expect their people to experience, to encounter, because they're just human beings, and then what can be done about it. This organization did things quite differently. Their SLT, the senior leadership team, started working much more closely with the organization they were acquiring. They then instructed us to run manager support. So for the senior and middle managers, we then taught them what to expect their teams to go through. We taught them things like coaching skills. We taught them the transition curve. We taught them how to listen to another human being and then move them into, you mentioned earlier, the fixed mindset, move them into the growth mindset instead. I can tell you, so this happened about 2 years ago, and I can tell you that within 6 months, everything was sort of settled. I don't mean absolutely everything. There were still some decisions to be made, but people weren't frightened. The company being acquired, everyone in that organization understood why it was a good move for the company to be acquired. The company that was doing the acquiring, everyone in that organization, and I do mean everyone at every level, understood why this was happening and what the benefits were. They all understood some of the difficulties to do with change, how there will be a bit of uncertainty, but they also understood the clear processes and systems that were in place to help them, to support them. When you have an understanding of the soft skills, the enabling skills, the human psychology that happens in our work, things change. One organization, a year on, still reeling, horrific productivity loss, and people actively trying to fight against things. Another organization, the good example, where the change has brought people together, people haven't been afraid of it, and they're actively working together. Well, they did actively work together to create the new entity. And I've had people from the acquiring organization and people from the organization that was acquired on courses since, and they've talked about this really fondly. And meanwhile, let's go back to the most senior leaders. Their lives have been so much easier. And it also means they can report back to their parent company that everything's been a success. So clients haven't suffered, staff haven't suffered, senior leaders have had a benefit as well. And oh my goodness, for the HR teams, they have had so much more of a quiet life. The money they invested in the soft skills training around change management, which was to do with storytelling, communication, and resilience, massively, massively paid off for them. These things, they make a huge difference.
Absolutely. I mean, you're talking about leading change. In my experience, most change leaders want to create change for a good reason. And what they're hearing is people complaining about the system or they're complaining about something. So they think, oh, okay, I'm going to make everybody's lives better by bringing in this change. I'm going to fix everybody's problems. And the challenge is, if they don't understand the psychology, is they end up working on this on their own or in a corporate way instead of involving people. And because they understand it, when they announce it, they're expecting everyone to go, well done, thank you, you've just made our lives better. And what they get is that resistance. And suddenly it becomes well, what are you moaning about? Just get on with it. And suddenly there is that disconnect. So once we understand that psychology, as you said, Nick, we can understand that disconnect from both sides, and then we can enable people to be able to bridge that gap. Authenticity
Because
can
there's
be
nearly always a way. There's nearly always a way. It's just about learning what that way is. Now, I wonder
Absolutely.
how relatable this is to everyone. Feras, could you launch the quick poll if that's okay? So, Feras and I
Absolutely.
have shared some examples, and we've chosen particularly project management and change management, but there are so many different examples we could have chosen from. Is this relatable to you, I wonder? Can you relate to anything that's happening, particularly in the bad example teams? If you can, don't worry. It's okay. That's part of the normal human experience. But be curious to see if you can or not. Now, while people answer that poll, we can see a couple of questions coming in. Most of them are technical questions, so we're leaving them for Etty to answer if that's okay. If you have questions about the content as we go through, do put it into the Q&A. Feras and I will keep an eye out on that. We're always happy to be interrupted and dive into those things as well.
Absolutely. Well, we've got
Feras, can you see the results of the poll? We've got results coming in.
absolutely. So we've got 28% have voted, and 94% so far have said yes. One person has said no.
So
So
the
I'm
person who
leaving it
said
open
no,
for a little bit longer.
that's awesome that you're saying no. We really support you. That's great. But unfortunately, these are common problems, and we see them happen time and time again by intelligent, smart organizations and teams. Unfortunately, it's just part of the human experience that there can be difficulties with communication, with project planning elements, with engagement, and all of these things. And we're gonna dive into that a little bit more.
So I've ended the poll. So overall, it's 95% have said yes, 1% have said no. Sorry, 5% have said no. It'd be good to be able to do some maths, Nick. So that shows
So
that
one,
most people can relate to that, and that's something. You talked about the statistics at the beginning. Anecdotally, me and you see this all the time. We see the difference this makes. We can relate to it, but it's good to have the data to be able to back up the stories that we see, so that we're not feeling that it's just us or we're on our own. And when we work across hundreds of organizations that are very different, but the reality is these common experiences, the same stories come up again and again and again, similar sort of barriers, especially in the project environment.
hmm. I wonder if it's just a rhetorical question for everyone, just something to consider. How much does your organization offer soft skills or interpersonal skills or leadership skills or enabling skills training at the moment? I wonder. And I wonder what the implication is if they do or they don't. What are the opportunities that are being missed? What are the people that are leaving? Ruth, I can see a question up here from yourself. What do you think about the need for a baseline culture to set the tone to enable these skills to land and be acceptable? Yeah, it's really good. So there's an old phrase which is if you can't measure it, you can't manage it.
Mm-hmm.
And having an understanding of the baseline is really good. And this starts at the top. So the example I gave earlier with Company B, the successful company, it should be noted that it started with the EXCO, the executive committee. It started with them realizing that actually, yes, they wanted to invest in this. Actually, that's not true. It started with the HR director. It started with the HR director being a really good HR director and saying to the EXCO, there's some bad things that can happen in change. Let's take what we call a scout mindset. Let's have doubt. Let's explore what we don't know. Let's bring in a specialist and see what we can learn from them. And I can tell you the first session that I ran for them was supposed to just be a 3-hour masterclass. It ended up going on for about 4.5 hours, not because I ran over time, but because the board that I was working with changed other appointments because they realized this was huge. They needed to know this stuff. So that was a really nice thing. So yeah, there's the saying as well, culture eats strategy for breakfast.
I
And a
was about to say that. Yeah.
culture of learning and a culture of curiosity, a culture of a desire to do things the right way is huge. There's also a difference between a culture that looks at long-term success and short-term success as well. So good question, Ruth. Absolutely.
There's something I want to quickly add to that. There's also the disconnect between what an organization says their values and culture is and how they act. And that creates a big cognitive dissonance in people where they're saying, oh, wow, we stand for all of those things. But in reality, they're behaving in very different ways. And that creates a lot of stress on people. They know they're not being authentic. So it's really important that the culture is measured on actions, not purely on words.
Yeah, very much so. You and I have both worked with organizations in the past where their stated culture looks beautiful. Their real culture is very, very different. Again, that comes from a senior piece, I think, um, where you have to actually reward the correct things and not punish things. Definitely.
Cool.
Okay, so what's the return on investment on all of this stuff? How do the programs build capabilities? It's all about that trust and focus, isn't it, more than anything else? It's all about exactly what Ruth's been mentioning there, the culture points. I'm going to share slides again. Let's look at just a couple of quick things. My apologies. Let's just look at a couple of quick ways that this stuff can have an impact. Now, what we've done here is we've just selected a few. Just selected a few that may be a little bit more relevant for HR professionals, learning and development professionals, CPD professionals, etc. Soft skills training can help immediately reduce the amount of time spent on things such as employee engagement and really increase the employee engagement. And as we know from so many different studies, when you have higher employee engagement, you have people who are willing to go the extra mile, think differently, think smarter, grow themselves, collaborate more. Employee engagement is huge. Employee engagement has a big impact on things such as well-being and stress levels as well, which then impact things such as absenteeism and retention. So if you're looking to move that needle on your engagement scores, which many people are nowadays because they understand it's a key marker of success for an organization, investing in those soft skills can be absolutely key. There's the definite stuff that we've been talking about in terms of project success, including things like organizational change projects, integration projects, technology projects, AI projects, you name it. Projects survive not just because of the project plan, but because of our ability to engage others, build collaboration, build cohesion, etc. From an HR point of view, again, we have elements such as talent management. There's, something that's been around for so many years is the idea of being promoted to a position of incompetence. We get promoted up because we're good, we get promoted up because we're good, we get promoted up because we're good, and then we don't know how to do the next role. And continuous development of professional skills, soft skills, enabling skills, starts to move that ceiling and starts to enable people to say things such as, I don't know how to be a regional director of this. I don't know how to be a team leader of that. And therefore go out and actually seek the answers instead of just being petrified, worried, silent, and suffering from imposter syndrome, which is so common. So common.
I don't know about you, Nick, but I don't know if people are being more honest about it nowadays, or there is more of it nowadays. And I think it's something that comes up on every single leadership program I do, is the fact that people feel like they have to be this imposter. They don't always have the answer, or they don't have the skills, or they've never done it before. They're having to put on this face and pretend. And that's really uncomfortable for people. So, I mean, it's great that they're being vulnerable to be honest with us and to tell us that. But the reality is, I don't know if the fact that skill changes happen so quickly that I think people are really out of their comfort zone. Sorry, Nick.
No, I completely agree with you, 100%. I think we're seeing it more and more and more. I think one of the few silver linings to come out of the COVID situation was a greater understanding of well-being, resilience, mental health, and that then led to, hopefully, fingers crossed, cultures where people can be more open. But even so, actually, I don't see it so much on the leadership courses. I see it when we're doing the executive coaching. And everyone on this call right now, observation, the more senior someone is, the more likely they are to be suffering from that imposter syndrome. So if that's you that we're describing, please know you're not alone. It's normal. There are solutions for it. It's okay. It's a normalized thing. It definitely is.
I don't know if it's happened to you, and I'm sure it has, Nick, where you're coaching two different people, and one of them is saying, I wish I was more like that person. They're so controlled, they're so with it. And you know from talking to that other person that they're really stressed out or they're struggling with something else. But they're seeing the other person as the person who's like really competent or has that presence and gravitas. So, and we can't share it because there is that confidentiality part. But internally, you're thinking, actually, you know what? This is such a common thing.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm going to bring us back a little bit because we're on the edge of talking about psychological factors such as the spotlight effect and how we perceive ourselves. There's so much that we could go through, and we don't have the time on this. Just to say that other quick things that we can, that soft skills can really support with are ultimately things like product innovation and problem solving.
Mm.
There's lots of examples whereby allowing people the space to think, which takes strong interpersonal skills and soft skills, then and increasing their engagement, then leads to much more effective problem solving and product innovation. And that then ultimately leads to some key benchmarks such as better customer retention and net promoter index scores. The bullet points we put up there, we tried to make them kind of specific to HR and learning and development.
Mm.
But here's the bottom line. It boosts business success. And that's what all of the major consultancies have found. And it's why they want to invest in their people, because they know there is a huge return on investment. One bullet point that isn't in this slide deck was I think it was another McKinsey piece that noted that just at a very baseline immediate effect, for every $1 million invested in interpersonal skills, there was a 1.5 million return on investment immediately. And that's a direct return, not an indirect return. Indirect returns include things like higher retention and engagement, and therefore not having to re-recruit and bring people up to speed. The direct stuff is simply a problem was solved that wouldn't have been solved because two teams were in conflict previously, for example.
Mm.
Let's have a play with some of the most important mission critical skills, let's say. So I've got a list for you here as kind of a little bit of soft recommendation. If you're an HR and L&D team, if you're thinking about what you want to start employing, here's some things that you might want to start playing with. Feras and I put this list together. And at ILX, by the way, we offer a series called Mission Critical Skills, which kind of reflects this. There's about 20 different soft skills courses on the public schedule. There's about 8 that are kind of deemed as core for example, project management practice. But let's explore. So the first one's no surprise at all. Good old communication skills makes a huge, huge difference. And linked in with the communication skills is emotional intelligence.
Mm.
It's one that's often dropped. It's one that's often forgotten. Feras, very quickly, why is emotional intelligence important, do you think? What's the value of emotional intelligence?
Well, the value of emotional intelligence is about being able to understand yourself and understand what your drivers are, what your triggers are, and being able to empathize and understand others. So, to quote Stephen Covey, seek first to understand, then be understood. You cannot influence anybody else then if you don't understand what the other person's point of view, but also you can't influence anybody else if you can't influence yourself. So it's
Yeah,
the difference between responding and reacting. Lack of emotional intelligence is being reacting, like somebody pressing your button and snapping, sending that angry email, or avoiding that difficult conversation. That if we develop emotional intelligence and develop it in others, then what that means is we're in control, and that's the key part.
the organization that helps core staff with emotional intelligence reduces conflict, increases engagement, and saves so much manager time. They also send a little ripple out because this affects our personal lives as well. And although everything we
Absolutely.
generally do, you and I, is looking at the corporate world, actually, all of these tools apply to personal lives as well.
Mm,
Another big one is prioritization, i.e.,
mm,
time management, but it's a little bit more than that. It's about figuring out what the aligned goals are. Of
mm,
course, change management, the new business as usual is change. Critical thinking skills, having things like a scout mindset, being aware of our bias points, being able to understand how to make a decision really effectively. Links in with problem solving skills, and of course, presenting and influencing, because it's one thing having a great idea. If you can't get your stakeholders on board, if you can't get your teams on board, if you can't get your clients on board, then none of that really counts. And the
What's really
final
fun,
piece,
sorry, Nick.
go, yeah.
What's really fascinating about that one is that was something we used to teach, 20 years ago at the senior level. The only people who would present would be the senior managers. The reality is presentation is a core skill for everybody. And most communication nowadays is done through in meetings by presenting through slides. And we've all sat through slides and meetings where we that by PowerPoint or we didn't understand it. So it's gone from a nice to have to being a core skill.
Absolutely. And then to wrap all of this up, there is, of course, leadership. It's such a key thing. It absolutely is. Now, on here are 8 separate topic points, but the reality is that they're not separate at all. Actually, they're all deeply connected. If you want to be effective in terms of prioritization and time management, you also need to do good problem solving skills. Good critical thinking requires good emotional intelligence and communication skills. So all of these different elements are connected as well. However, every team, every organization is different. So what Feras and I would like to do now is share a tool with you that you can then share with others that helps you decide what the right next step is for you. What is the area that you want to develop? I'm going to talk you through it. It's called the Progressive Leadership Model. We created it about 12 years ago now, and it's been very, very successful because it really helps people in lots of different situations. It works like this. With any skill set or competency, you can think of yourself, or a team can think of themselves, as being in one of 4 stages. Stage 1 is, you know what, pretty new to this. New to the top, maybe very, very intelligent. Maybe the individual's got multiple PhDs, but they haven't done the thing that you need them to do before. That means they're stage 1. They're new to the task. As they get a little bit more experience, as they get a little bit more training and understanding, they move to stage 2. They're experienced, but they're still learning. With more experience, with more practice, with more training and support, we move up to competent and confident, stage 3. And eventually, of course, you can see where this is going. We get to stage 4, which is where they are the subject matter expert. They've mastered that particular skill or discipline, whether it's influential storytelling, whether it's coaching others, whether it's proactive thinking, whether it's critical thinking, or any one of those elements that we've talked through. Now, this is a journey. This is an ongoing journey. There's a nice little diagram here. Let me bring up my laser pointer. We start off in stage 1. As we get better, we move into stage 2. Hopefully we get better, move into stage 3. Even better, stage 4, subject matter expert. What do we do next? Well, hopefully we step into something new again. In any career, in any skill set, we would encourage people to be in stage 4 for some things and stage 1 for some things, because that means you're growing. And it turns out that feeling that you are growing, learning, and developing is another great way to maintain engagement with people and to retain highly skilled people as well. If people feel that they're in stage 4 for everything, our advice would be quit your job. You're not growing. In fact, Feras, you gave me this advice well over 25 years ago, which was make sure you're uncomfortable with something at least once a day. There's this idea of stepping into new things. So that's the basic setup for the progressive leadership model, kind of the philosophy around it. How do we actually use it? Well, you sit down with a team, and the first thing we do is we play with a core competency. I've chosen, just as an example, core competency, for example, of risk management. And then we can rate, okay, how good are we actually as a team with risk management? Are we stage 1, 2, 3, or 4? We might say we're there. We're at the start of stage 3, just as an example. Okay, in order to move the dial on that, in order to be really strong with risk management, what are the enabling competencies? What are the soft skills, the interpersonal skills that we need around this? This is a great team discussion to have, by the way. You ask your team, what do you think we need to have in the team in order to do this well? And we might get answers such as engaging key stakeholders, engaging and influencing the wider population, which is very different. Some years ago, I worked with the UN and some of their risk specialists. It was brilliant, but their big task was, we've got amazing risk plans, but the people, the boots on the ground, don't get them and won't give us the data. Okay, then the task is, in order for us to increase our risk management capability, it's engaging and influencing wider populations. Engaging others with change, because under the banner of risk management, there should always be things moving. We're taking things as they become issues instead of risks. and we're moving them into different categories, and we're using new processes and systems, and we're looking at emergent risks. So engaging others with change is a powerful piece as well. Team synergy and sharing. Why reinvent the wheel? Let's make sure that we're sharing our best practice and sharing our experience. And just as a nice fun one, because it seems very relevant at the moment, we're definitely getting requirements around it, utilizing AI to save time as well. So this is just an example. This is not a predictive thing. I'm not saying this is what your list should look like, but just as an example, what might happen if you sat down with a team and said, what are the enabling competencies we need in place? You can then rate them. Okay, so how good are we at this? Yeah, we're pretty good at engaging our key stakeholders. We're not so good at engaging the wider population. We're okay with engaging others with change, but there's definitely movement that could be done there. As a team, the different teams work quite well together, and AI, well, we can use that, can we? Okay, I didn't realize that. So just by having that conversation, you start to build up almost a heat map or an assessment of where we need to move the dial. And then that means as a team leader, as an HR professional, as an L&D professional, whether you're working at a company level, department level, team level, or even just assessing your own skill set, because you can do this on a singular basis as well, you start to get an idea of, okay, I've just built a talent development plan here. That's exactly what that is, a talent development plan. I've got a clear idea actually of where I need to grow.
What's nice is that it empowers also what we call the wise eyes or fresh eyes. So there's the people who've been in the organization for a while who have lots of skills that other people might not realize that they can share or tools. But there's also the new people in the organization who've seen something that works much better or have solutions, but they don't feel that they can share it with others. So creating these dialogues or these tools allows the team to understand the resources within and outside the team, and creates the avenue to be able to share it and go, actually, what's missing and what do we have?
Absolutely. And it brings teams together as well. So just doing this exercise starts to unite people so they can recognize differences. It boosts diversity, it boosts inclusion. People feel together with something, especially if you link it with something such as a strong purpose statement as well. Now, that would be our advice and invitation to you, is to use a tool like the progressive leadership model to have a good conversation, to start thinking about, okay, what are the soft skills that are going to make a difference? What's going to help this project get over the line? What's going to help us expand a new market? What's going to help us continue to deliver a service while our resources are being cut? These are things that make a huge difference. However, having said that, Feras, over the last 20, 25 years, you've worked with lots of different organizations and companies. In your humble opinion, if you were to pick just one skill that made the biggest amount of difference, what would it be? What would you encourage an HR and L&D team to start allowing their people to experience?
Giving them the capability to deal and respond to change in a positive way. The reality is the pace of change has gone faster with technology, and people's jobs used to change every decade. The reality, that pace is happening yearly, if not faster. And with the advent of things like AI, whether we like it or not, that's going to transform how we work. And the fact that, that we're able to do this to hundreds of people virtually, this wouldn't have been done before COVID. So what I say to L&D professionals, does your organization have the capability to deal with change and enable people to see the opportunity in change rather than see it as a threat? What about you, Nick?
Well, actually, before I do, I just want to back up your statement even more as well. So in my earlier example, the story, there was company B that did everything the right way. Here's what happened next. Their global HR team decided that this was such a valuable proposition that what they wanted to do was set up a center of excellence for HR-led change. So we did a 3-day program for them, which was a deep dive into the psychology of change. And then we did an additional 3 days of train the trainer so that their HR teams could go out to different parts of the organization and assist 3 different levels: senior levels, mid-manager, and core staff, running different types of training courses around change. So either teaching people how to run a change or teaching people how to thrive through a change and maintain their purpose and engagement and energy as well. So I just want to say, I really agree with you. I really agree with you, definitely.
You mentioned, you asked earlier, is it worth it? That was an example where the organization had to, because we did it in Munich at the time, and they'd flown people over from all over the world. And this was a global team. They'd invested the time in these busy people's lives. But
Mm.
the result was these people felt empowered to go back to their global areas and empower others. And that ripple effect has been massive.
Yeah, and I should say that the top board of that organization, this is a financial organization. Everything was about the money. But what they could see was this was a good investment. It was going to save them huge amounts of money on multiple change programs.
Mm.
For me, it's about purpose and prioritization. I'd say, and I'd share a story. Last week, I was at a conference and I was lucky enough to be on a panel with the CEO of an organization of well over 40,000 people.
Mm.
And someone in the audience asked, "What is your top tip for resilience?" And the CEO was great. He said, "Well, I can see that you've already asked this question, and your answers have included things such as I do yoga and running and swimming, and I talk to my friends." He looked at the audience and he said, "I have to tell you, none of that stuff's going to help you in the moment." The audience went quiet. That's not the received wisdom. The CEO said, "Do those things. They will help you in the long term, but in the moment, when everything is going crazy, when you've got 100 emails and you've got way too many things to do, you need to relentlessly prioritize." And that includes relentlessly prioritizing your own health and well-being. And I thought, actually, that's a really good message. Do all of those lovely things that keep us healthy and fit in the long term, but recognize that in the moment, you have to be able to understand what's the core purpose of what we are trying to do here. These four things that I've got in front of me, what's the one that's going to move that dial the most? And then linking in with communication, how do I speak to those three stakeholders and explain there's going to be a delay, or maybe even that stuff isn't going to get done because this bit is more important. When you do that, when you have that relentless prioritization, which is definitely a skill, it really, really is. But when you have that, you have people doing the right thing.
Put first things first.
But first things, quoting Covey again. Yeah, never does any harm to quote Stephen Covey, does it? Not at all in the slightest. Okay, we should probably wrap up there so we can start to go to a couple of questions as well if we have time. I just want to kind of summarize a couple of points. This is about efficiency and effectiveness.
Mm.
When you employ soft skills, or more importantly, enabling skills, it makes a huge difference to both your efficiency and your effectiveness. Efficiency is doing something quickly and easily. Effectiveness is doing the right thing. And skills such as critical thinking, skills such as communication, skills such as leadership, they reduce the conflict, they make things clearer, they give people true sight or clear sight, and they make everything so much more effective.
Mm.
And with that, I'm going to share slides just one more time.
Mm.
Three summary points. So I hope that you found the webinar useful so far, this conversation. Hopefully it's given you some thoughts. Probably the three big takeaways that we would give you are technical skills are absolutely great. They really are. But if you don't have the enabling skills, everything is at a disadvantage. You can have the best product or idea or service offering. If you cannot communicate that, if you cannot engage that, if you cannot get buy-in or build-in from your client or your people or your stakeholders, that idea isn't going anywhere. It's not just the great idea, it's the ability to communicate it as well. If you choose to invest in these kind of enabling skills, then generally you're going to find that you massively increase the amount of talent that you can attract, because it's what people are looking for, and retain as well. And in that journey between attraction and retention, people are growing with you as well. You're making them quicker, better, stronger, smarter. That is both ethical and it's really good for bottom line results as well. And the third takeaway is that this is universal. It doesn't matter what industry or sector you are in, enabling skills help teams to excel regardless of the industry sector. And that's why we see organizations such as the armed forces embracing these things normally before anyone else.
Yeah.
Because when there's a life on the line, that's when they're looking really, really carefully to see, how do we reduce the deaths? How do we increase the wins? I think that's something that in the public sector and private sector, we generally catch up on instead.
I want to add one more just to be the spanner in the works. It also makes the environment much better to work in. Makes it nice, which is what everybody wants. So that's how we retain people. That's how we engage people.
Absolutely. If it's a nicer environment, people work harder, they stay longer, and they solve problems more effectively and easily as well. Now, my apologies, we've only got 9 minutes, 30 seconds left. But if you have any questions based around anything that we've shared so far, Feras and I would love to hear them. There's no such thing as a stupid question. There really isn't, not at all in the slightest. So feel free to ask in the Q&A box. It's always nice to see what kind of questions come in, to see if there's any good fun challenges. We can make further recommendations, we can explore things, we can point you in different directions or share other stories as well. So do feel free to get in some questions, and we can explore some nice things there.
If you want any grooming tips, please add them as well.
Of course, yeah, of course. While we do that, Etty, can I invite you to come back, if that's okay, and talk through the offer, if that's good, just while I see if any questions come in?
Of course, yeah. Do you want to just flick to the next slide? I think that's got most of the information on. So yeah, thank you all for joining us today. As Nick said, if you've got any questions, please do pop those into the question box. But yeah, while we're waiting for those, I will just run through the exclusive offer that I mentioned earlier. So for everyone that's joined live today, we are offering 2 free places for your company to try out some of our virtual business skills courses. So you can choose from sort of 20 different courses that we've got available. They cover a range of soft skills. We've got ones about leadership, ones about communication, resilience, all of the good stuff that Nick and Feras have covered in today's webinar. So if you just scan the QR code on the screen, it will take you to a Google form. If you could just fill that out with your information, and then that will register your interest, and one of our team members will get in touch with you to sort of recommend the best courses for you. We'll chat through kind of your challenges and your needs, and we can sort out the best ones for you. So yeah, so scan that, fill out the form before 7 p.m. on Friday to register your interest, and yeah, we'll get in touch. I think we've had a question.
Yeah,
we have from Kirsten. Sure, absolutely. So Kirsten, you shared, are there any free resources we could use to help our teams if we're in an organization that does not provide this kind of training and would not be willing to fund it? There are issues around funding, definitely. And I noticed your email address .gov.uk. So there's always tightness on things. So the first thing is, this is going on YouTube. And Etty, did our previous LinkedIn Live learning piece, did that go on YouTube, or was it just on LinkedIn as well?
It's not on YouTube, but it is still available on our LinkedIn channel. So if you scroll through the posts, then yeah, our LinkedIn Live on sort of a similar topic is also available.
So I mentioned that because in that one, we gave a couple of other tools as well, and it may be useful for you to look up. The other thing is, this sounds a little bit trite, but it's true. There is so much out there as a resource. One of the easiest things to do is to come and book on a course. That's great. But if not, you know what? You do have amazing TED Talks available to you. It's just about what you want to learn. If, for example, I wanted to convince my senior members in my organization of the value of thinking differently, I might look at a TED Talk around scout mindsets. If I wanted to look at resilience and the ability to manage under pressure, I cannot recommend enough Dr. Dara Long's TED Talk on crazy busy. If you put into YouTube ER Doctor crazy busy, you get an amazing 13-minute TED Talk. And so Feras and I often use in our training, we often use these kind of videos as well, because it's good to have variation. So we'll talk through a principle, a framework, or a tool. There are books available. There are free download points available. So the simple answer is yes, definitely. There's vast amounts of free resources. The difficulty is curating them.
Actually,
wading through.
I've got a suggestion on that with one of the organisations that had a similar question. And what I recommended and they instituted was lunch and learn sessions, where they'd have people who had a specialty or they'd see a TED talk and they would be encouraged at lunchtime to get together or set up a meeting and train or even during their own meetings to train the rest of the team on this topic. So it creates that self-reliance empowerment. So there's a lot of resources within the organization itself and knowledge. Utilize that. Absolutely.
Yeah, and lunch and learns can be great, particularly when they're run by team members, because there will be huge amounts of knowledge already in your organization. It's just about accessing it as well.
Mm.
Video, I can see. Will you post this on YouTube? Yeah, absolutely. So, Etty, this is going on YouTube, isn't it? So,
Yeah, so this will be up on YouTube this afternoon, and we will also be sharing an email with you guys. So for anyone that's registered, you'll receive an email with a link to that YouTube video. So.
and I want to give a tip around this. If any of you want to encourage others to watch this so that they are engaged and actually want to invest in the soft skills training that your organization is missing, remember, it's not the stats that make the difference. 70% of change projects fail. It's really easy for that just to slip through our minds. It's a story of success and a story of failure. When you share how a team spent so much time trying to work with another team when the two teams were going like that, and if only they'd had some good interpersonal skills, that would have changed everything. That's where we start to see the real return on investment. So for us and I, we even run a course, Telling the Data Story, which is all about how you can take data and turn it into an influential presentation that actually lands with people as well. Irina, the problem is that there are not really job requests defined by what soft skills mean. What do you think about this? So I think we're seeing a change. We're absolutely seeing a change. We're seeing that in many job descriptions now, we're starting to see those soft skills coming in, the enabling skills coming in. So not just must have good social care discipline, must have good underwriting discipline, must have good accountancy discipline, risk management discipline, but must be able to influence and present to people of a certain grade, must be able to build engagement around these things. So actually we are seeing most definitely in the job descriptions, these soft skills are starting to come in, not just come in, but be noticed as perhaps some of the most important skills.
Mm. Something I
Hope
want to
that
add to
helps
that.
a little bit.
Sorry, something I want to add to that is I'm getting a lot more organisations saying that we can train people internally on some of the technical stuff, or they can learn that quickly. We find it much harder to train people on the soft skills, and that's what we're looking for: is people with somebody who has the right attitude or has the people skills. They can learn the technical skills. The other way around is much harder. So I'm getting that from a
Yeah,
lot of different organisations.
yeah.
We've got another question from Jason. Any advice for people who find building relationships with others difficult due to anxiety or just in general? So that's a very common challenge, and quite a few people find it difficult to build relationships. And one of the things we say is once we understand something, we're able to deal with it. So there's quite a few different frameworks we use from the Narrow Ape tool that's about understanding and talking to people in the way they would like to be spoken to, but also about being authentic and being yourself. So, and it's that emotional intelligence piece that we discussed earlier, but understand what triggers that anxiety or what causes you, and how can you manage those challenges, and how can you be yourself within those situations. Nick, any advice from you?
Yeah, well, we have a course which is networking for mutually beneficial outcomes, and there is a section on that which is networking for introverts. An awful lot of people, as soon as you start to say networking or building relationships, they go,
Yeah.
I don't want anything to do with that. It just feels fake. It feels dirty. It feels artificial. So what we look at is a couple of clear steps. We look at why people would do it, what the genuine reasons are, and the importance of having a mutually beneficial relationship as well. There's even little tips such as if you find yourself in a social situation, have 5 questions all ready to go. So that way you're not trying to manage with some small talk that feels very uncomfortable and very unnatural, but just having 5 questions ready to go. How did you get into this topic point? What do you like best about it? What concerns you or worries? If you had a magic wand and you could change our industry, what would be the one thing that you would do? And then we teach people to listen to those as well. And I can tell you, just to make it fun, the precursor to that particular scripting point is a lovely video that Keanu Reeves did on TikTok, where he talks about, where he demonstrates how an introvert feels before they're about to make a phone call. He's psyching himself up. He's psyching himself up. He makes the phone call, gets an engaged tone, he goes, oh, like that. So this is a reality. It absolutely is a reality. So yeah, good question, Jason. Yes, there are courses, there are resources, and the advice would be, first of all, no, it's okay. 50% of the world are going to be introverts more than extroverts. An awful lot more than that are going to get nervous over building relationships, particularly if the relationship is with the big scary person as well, the brand new client. And we also teach things such as confidence with new client interactions as well. There's always a way, there's always a pathway, there's always a framework that maybe it won't fill the world with sunshine, unicorns, and rainbows, but it will make life a bit easier, definitely. Okay, officially we've come to time. If there are any more questions, do feel free to get them in. That's perfectly okay. Feras and I can still hang around for a little bit and answer those. If not, I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope it's been valuable, and I hope it's given you some things to think about as well. Thank you, Jason. Much appreciated. So, Etty, shall we wrap up there? I can't see any more questions.
Yeah, I think that's everything. Oh, I'll let you guys answer the last one.
It was just thank you from Marina. That's okay.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. As I said, obviously the QR code is there, and I've also popped a link in the chat to fill out the Google form if you are interested in those free business skills courses. Thanks again, Nick and Feras. Today's been really great. I hope everyone else has found it as interesting as I have. And yeah, the YouTube video will be live later this evening. So we will see you all soon.
Thanks, everyone. See you next time.
Bye, everyone.